Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever the hell you are. My name's Stuart Brisgell on the Rant Network with my partner in crime, David Solomon, sitting on my purple screen to my right, which may be to my left. It all depends on which way, the engine decides to put us. But the most important thing is, do you remember something called the Ice Age is coming in the 80s? How about global warming in the 90s? How about, the Ice Age getting rebranded as climate change? And there's a couple of hosts of other names that have come up year after year after year. But every single generation, they seem to rebrand it and make great promises, right? It's doomsday all over again unless we do. And the funny thing is, our leaders fly all over the world in extremely inefficient vehicles with entourages the size of like small cities. To make it even more important, something that they can do on Zoom, as we've proven during COVID, these world leaders don't have to fly to Switzerland, Davos, right? Go to Indonesia. There's no purpose, there's no rhyme, there's no reason. This is nothing that involves face-to-face conversations that can't be done through technology like we're here today. But these world leaders from 20 countries want to make promises. Kind of like my teenage kids. I promise I'll never do it again, right? As David has young adult kids, they promise too. And you know what? The net result is still the same. Frustration, gray hair, losing hair. But when world leaders do it, how disingenuous is that? What is their motive? David, I think you got something to add.
So we just went through an election cycle. In case you're still not aware, it's still going on in the United States. We haven't declared anything. But if you heard some of the campaigning here in the United States and Canada and other places lately, climate change comes up often. It's the buzzword. Now, one of the comments I've heard is, you conservatives, first of all, we're all bucketed. You all don't believe in climate change. And I don't agree with that. I think that there is a problem, and I think we are screwing up the earth big time, and I think we're heading for a massive problem. That we agree on how to get there is the whole other thing. But I think we could say that most people will agree that we're having an issue in the environment. Now, what I can't stand, and Stuart, you alluded to it, how much more BS can we shovel on people? I promise we are going to effect change. You're right, Stuart. There was a conference in Sharm el-Sheikh in Egypt last weekend. Okay, so you talk about Davos. This is in Sharm el-Sheikh in Egypt, right? Where gas emissions from the cars in downtown Cairo is one of the worst in the world.
But wait a minute. Hold it. You're telling me that there's a country that hasn't cut back their carbon emissions, and that we're in the United States are cutting off the spigot for all fossil fuels, but global warming, David, I think maybe the audience needs to understand the term global warming was eradicated to change to climate change so that you, the stupid idiot, wouldn't understand that changes at home and not abroad affect zero net gain.
So look, okay, but this is what I'm trying to get to, okay, is that here we are, we're listening to all these politicians all pontificate about how we need to be more environmentally conscious. Your president, Mr. Biden, went into this whole conference in Egypt, and he promised that by 2030, 50% to 52% of greenhouse gas emissions will be cut by 2030, and by 2050 will be at, you'll be zero.
Sounds great.
Likewise, Prime Minister Trudeau did virtually the same thing. He says 40 to 45% below 2005 levels by 2030 and net zero by 2050.
What did China, India, or Pakistan say?
Okay, but they said zero because they're saying, and even Russia, they're saying, screw you, the rest of the world, because we're going to do whatever the heck we want. But Stuart, my point of all this, though, is that the United States and Canada aren't telling you and me the real truth, because the truth hurts.
But you sound like
Truthers,
a conspiracy theorist when you say they don't want to tell us. There's no conspiracy theory, David. So you can't say they don't want to tell you the truth because that's implying in my verbiage that there's a conspiracy theory.
not a conspiracy theory,
Global
but Stuart,
warming
no,
or
no,
sorry,
no, no,
climate
no,
change.
no, 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 no. What I'm trying to say is this: if you look at realities today, right? The reality in Europe today, because they're all talking the same language as Mr. Biden, Mr. Trudeau, they're all talking the same language. But do you know that this winter Europe is going to be freezing? So what are they doing? They're opening up coal plants. They're turning up the heat because they know that people cannot afford to stay warm. It's a crisis. So all this notion about 2030, one, we're in 2022, which means 8 years from now, how many of these leaders will still be in power? Zero.
How many
So
will be alive?
so these pro
Well,
okay, forget
how
about your
many is
president, Stuart. You're president. I'm not. Nobody, like, everybody knows, but Trudeau's my age, so he's going to still be around in 8 years, age-wise. My point is that all this stuff, these promises for climate change, they haven't hit one. Do you know how long has COP been around? 27 years. This conference on climate change has been around for 27 years, since 1995. How much has been done? Almost nothing. There's a lot of
Well, that's
talk.
not true. That's not true, David. Biden has stopped drilling,
Oh,
or at least he
Donald
says he was going
Stewart,
to.
you're confusing. You're confusing politics and real efforts
No, I'm
towards
just
climate
interjecting
control.
politics into
No,
it.
you're no. The problem is that if you're talking about true plans towards a net zero in 2050, but you have to start today. And if you're telling me that you want to put, they put all these programs and money towards electric cars, my question is, if you cannot power people's homes, how are you going to power cars? And oh, by the by, how much is an electric car? How much is a hybrid car?
Well,
It's
hang on a second. Let's talk about electric cars that have cobalt batteries that's mined in
We
a,
talked
you know,
about that, Stuart, in
I know
another
we did.
round.
I know. I
We went,
know.
no, no, but you're going back to the wrong things here. I'm talking about this as being, once again, an Al Gore like political statement. There's no, vote for me and you'll see we'll improve life. The Biden administration promised billions of dollars. Did you know they promised billions of dollars to so-called developing countries so that they can go through their transformation? But in the meantime, what policies are put into place? And I love the comments from the left. The left is saying here, going, guys, it's you Republicans, it's you conservatives are stopping it. If you guys would just listen and let us do what we want. You know what? Did you see the protests? Speaking of the left, did you see the protests in the last few weeks?
Milk.
Milk
Milk.
dumped in grocery stores,
Oh, yeah. I mean,
paintings.
this Gen Z insanity of them going into grocery stores, cutting open cartons of milk, throwing at internationally world pieces, renowned pieces of art, pizza sauce. You
But
know,
but
it's
Stuart,
ridiculous.
this is who the Bidens and the Trudeaus are catering to. These lunatics who think that by running around with their spoiled attitude and defacing and doing what they're doing, that's going to change the climate. By the way, according to the United Nations, who I have zero faith in, by the way, the United Nations said that if all of the world actually hit their targets that they claimed, this is the quote: emissions will only fall by 3% by 2030. In order for it to be effective, it has to fall 45. So to your point, if China, India, Russia, Pakistan don't jump on board, nothing's going to happen in 8 years, folks. Nothing's going to
Yes,
happen.
in 8 years, the United States and Canada will be flat broke. China will have a war chest, and they're going to continue to do what they do. David, this whole concept that EV, this method only, and this concept is going to save us is a lie. It's just another lie. I think EV vehicles are great. I think they're fabulous for regional commuting cars and trucks. Fabulous idea. They have zero right now. The concept of it running in the Arctic Canadian North or through a tornado-stricken town is ridiculous because there's no means to provide refueling at
Yeah,
all. I mean, I think it's a
absolutely.
great idea. Like we
But
talked about
but I
this,
go back to what
the
Stuart. But I go
concepts are
back to
great.
but I go back to what I said from the very beginning. There's a lot of talk and no real plan. Yeah, you what Biden said. If you pass my legislation for the Inflation Act, in there, deep down inside there, there's some climate change stuff. But it's deep inside, so you have to pass my whole act
It's
just to
called a
get this
pork
climate change.
bill. It's called a
It's
pork belly
yeah,
bill.
it's
Someone's
called
getting rich.
BS.
Someone's getting rich. Yeah. David, but this
Stuart,
is
we
what
know,
we've
but
talked about.
this is the
You
whole
know,
thing.
you know what?
This is why I don't believe that climate change is a real issue for any of these politicians, other than trying to garner votes. They're not doing anything. You know, here in Montreal, Stuart, just to give you an
I've
idea.
got one better. I've got one better. I have a
Okay,
response to one of these eco freaks. Why don't you lobby that anyone that makes a statement is held fiscally and financially responsible to their pledge? So if Biden's represent that they're going to do this, then their estate should be on the hook to cover the bill. This is
you know,
making false, illegitimate, disingenuous promises. That's what they are. And if
but
they're not
Stuart, I got to
held
tell you,
accountable, then what's the point?
Stuart, you know, they're saying we're held accountable at the ballot box. Look, the mayor of Montreal decided to show all of her eco-friendly people how much she cares about climate change. So here's what she's done. Okay,
Oh,
this is to show you
good
where
one.
this is where the politicians sometimes think that they're smarter than you and me. First and foremost, she decided she's eliminated plastic bags in the city of Montreal, which means if you go to the grocery store, no more bags.
Yeah.
Okay, I can respect that, sort of. But then she went a step further. The flyers that are distributed to the doors are distributed in a plastic bag by a delivery company and a printing company. Well, she's decided that those bags are also illegal. Now, community newspapers are being delivered inside those bags. She's essentially said to everybody, I'm killing bags, I'm killing community newspapers because I don't care. I am going to satisfy my electoral base and show them that I mean business.
Can I ask you a question, David? I got to ask you a really good question. So they put things now in grocery stores in fabric bags or paper bags.
Correct.
Okay. Now, if I remember correctly, in Montreal, there is a plastics recycling and a paper recycling.
No, there's all the recycling. Doesn't matter,
Right.
Stuart.
Hang on a second. So what is the issue about recycling plastic
Because
bags?
her issue is that we're not using the bags for recycling. We're using to throw the other garbage out. She's not wrong, but the point I'm trying to get at is that she has essentially annihilated the entire delivery of flyers and of newspapers. And she says, you know what, if you want the flyers and if you want the community newspapers, you should register for it, which means she put all the onus on community newspapers that are barely making ends meet today to have additional costs to ensure that now the piece of paper is delivered to your door by mail to only those who want it. So all the communities who used to get a paper for free, it's virtually dead. She essentially killed community newspapers. She's
Can I ask you a
killed.
question? So
Mhm.
what is the post office going to do when it needs to put something in a plastic bag?
It doesn't. It puts it in a mailbox. There's no more bags. You cannot. She is essentially killed. So her mind here is that this is her way of dealing with climate change. Her way of dealing with climate change is by ruining. She's done other stupid things like this, but she has completely killed industries to satisfy a base.
What
Where's the
about
science?
Coca-Cola bottles? What about Coca-Cola bottles? They're
She
plastic.
doesn't listen. Hey, listen, buddy. I'm not going to get into it.
What
You have
about
30
milk?
seconds.
Milk
My
in the
point
milk
is,
bag.
my
Milk in
point
the
is,
milk bag. Remember the
my
milk
point
bag?
is that
That illegal?
politicians are the worst to get involved in climate
But
change.
David,
I'm
one last
sorry.
question. Do they still have milk in bags in Montreal?
Yes, we do.
Oh, wow. So milk
And
comes in
Canada,
a bag
all of
and another
Canada.
bag.
That's okay for now until she kills that too.
Okay.
My point is,
David, you
guys,
know what time it is?
the point is, and let's wrap it up here. This is not going to climate change and all these policies and all these games are not to make our lives better. It's only to try to garner your vote. Stuart,
Yep.
we'll do this on Wednesday.
Let's say goodbye.